rejected the message that would have saved message in the time period of probation of 120 years, probation was closed, as in symbolized as the door of the ark closing. Okay, so now let's look at another event, Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, where is the investigation with the story of Sodom and Gomorrah? Genesis chapter 18 and verse 20, and it says, "And the Lord said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know." So Sodom had sins in the city, and Christ was about to destroy based on the wickedness. But first he went to investigate to see if they had done what was being accused of. So, where is the probation? Genesis chapter 19 verse 1 and 2 says this, "And there came two angels to Sodom and at Eve, even. And Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, Behold, now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early, and go on your ways. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night." The probation was to be all night. If they did not come to the knowledge of the true God, then they would be lost. And I'm talking about the people of Sodom. So probation was to close that very day. So where was the message to the people of Sodom to reform? Would God destroy people without giving them a warning first? Of course not. God is merciful. That's far beyond his character. Genesis chapter 19 verse 12 says this, "And the men said unto Lot, Hast thou here any besides son-in-law, and thy sons, and thy daughters? And whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place." So the people of Sodom had a chance to reform to the message that the city will be destroyed. But did they reform? Did they repent? Did they turn away from their wicked? No. But a remnant came out. So the investigative judgment and the close of probation was seen as an example of what happens to those who do not accept the message. And if you look in the book of Jude, it says specifically that Sodom and Gomorrah was an example of eternal fire. So there's a lot we need to understand about the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now let's look at another event. Nineveh. Now this is the time of when Jonah was sent to Nineveh, that the destruction was to happen in 40 days. But let's go on and see whether we can see the investigative judgment and the close of probation. So first, where is the investigation? Jonah chapter 1 verse 2 says this, "Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness is come up before me." So what we see here is a case come up before God showing the wickedness of Nineveh. Before you can proclaim that a city is wicked, there must have been a form of investigation. I can't look at a glass of water and say it is cold unless I dip my finger and come to a conclusion. Is the water cold or is it hot? If I dip my finger and find it's hot, I've investigated to see whether the water is cold or hot. So for Christ to say their wickedness is come up before me shows that there must have been an investigation before he can say that this place is wicked. So this was the investigation. Where is the probationary time? Jonah chapter 3 verse 4 says this, "And Jonah began to enter into the city a day's journey, and he cried and said, Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. Once again, God in his mercy gives a message of reform for the people of Nineveh to reform to the God of heaven, the creator of heaven and earth. The probationary time was to be 40 days. After 40 days was going to be the close of probation. So after the 40 days, did they accept the message? Jonah chapter 3 verse 9 and 10 says this, Who can tell if God will turn and repent, and turn away from his fierce anger, that we perish not? And God saw their works, that they turned from their evil way, and God repented the evil that he had said he would do unto them, and he did it not. So because they took heed to the message, and they turned from their evil, they were delivered. Now there is something about this event that should bring us hope, bring us amazing hope. If we are taking heed to the message to reform, the close of probation and the investigative judgment should not seem as of doom and gloom, but we should see it as a sign of deliverance. The only reason it may seem as doom and gloom is because we are not fully dead to sin. Once we are fully dead to sin, we should experience the peace, the rest of God. When you are fully dead to sin, it means you are upholding the law of God. And that means for you to hold the law of God, it means you love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul. As Romans chapter 13 verse 9 and 10 says, love is the fulfilling of the law. Let's look at another example, another event, and that is Daniel. Now Daniel has many stories or many examples in the book it is written in, but we're going to look at a specific event, and that is at Belshazzar's feast. So where is the investigation? It says this, and this is the writing that was written, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. So what we see here is that God had investigated the kingdom, and now his investigation is finished. So what is the verdict after his investigation? Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. So the verdict is pronounced as guilty. So now that God has looked, he has investigated the situation of Babylon and has come to a conclusion that they are wanting. What is the sentence? Peres, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Okay, now there's something very interesting. Notice that there was no probationary time. The message was given, and then it was done according to the will of the one who wrote on the wall. Why is that? Why was there no message of probationary time? A message to reform? We're going to find that out in a minute. Now, through studying this out, there's something I myself have noticed that I didn't notice before, and that was in verse 29 and verse 30. It says, Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him, that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. Now this is interesting because Belshazzar proclaimed that Daniel was right. By his actions of putting the golden chain and the robe of scarlet on Daniel shows that Daniel was right. Let's see if this is so. Verse 7 of Daniel chapter 5 says this. The king cried aloud to bring the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, Whosoever shall read this writing and shew me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about his neck. and shall be the third ruler.